Hello, and welcome back or welcome to the Yogi Roth Show. Appreciate you taking the time to listen to this show today. It's an important one, and it's going to be one that I think is going to be pretty fun because it is a very interesting time right now in our world. Of course, it's the fourth quarter in major college football. It's November. They often say, right, the quote is, they remember what you do in November. Well, I think in this country, we're going to remember what happens in November as well. Very, very important time. That being said, it got me thinking back and getting nostalgic about this podcast because it's grown in ways that I didn't know that it could. And a lot of it is because of you and, of course, our guests. In fact, all of it is because of you and our guests. So I want to say thank you for listening, sharing with your community, and at times even writing a review on iTunes. And if you haven't, I'd love if you could. It's the way the podcast game works is the more reviews, the more people see it, and I believe that this podcast hopefully is giving people tools to better enhance their life. So I thought back on season 4, which had a tight focus of seeking and uncovering the humanity in major college football. And one of our first guests was Jim Jordan, a filmmaker, a storyteller, the director of the Michigan series All or Nothing on Amazon. And now look at what Michigan is doing this season. It's incredible. We had Dr. Michael Gervais talking about anxiety and depression in college athletics. Look what colleges are doing. They're making sure that there is a focus and a lot of attention on young men and women who want to talk about anxiety and depression, specifically athletes. We had coaches on like Mac Brown and Mark Speckman. We had Jared Goff on of the LA Rams. Brenda Tracy, the loudest voice in the country, who's talking about ending sexual and relationship violence on college campuses and doing tremendous advocacy work there. We had student athletes on, like Tanner Mangum and Mackenzie Milton. And then most recently, we had Trent Dilfer on, someone I consider family and a close friend, and Bruce Feldman, accomplished storytellers, both in their own rights. I give you that recap because I wanted to pause today and tell you a personal story. It goes something like this. I can remember as a boy waking up in early November. Sometimes football was still going in our community. Sometimes the season was already over. But I can remember walking out in our tiny little town of Dalton, Pennsylvania. Now, to paint a picture, Dalton has 2,500 people. No stoplights. Our high school still doesn't even have a soccer team. I think it's safe to say that the community has rallied and at times revolved around its football program. I grew up in the middle of that. But in early November, I'd walk out of our front porch, down the 4 steps. I'd see the dew on a bush to my left and to the right, and walk out through our garden. And I'd take a left. And down the street, about 200 meters, was the Dalton Firehouse. Now at the firehouse, they also had the police office, where there was a little holding area if there was any trouble. It's where the ambulance was. It's where they would clean those beautiful fire trucks and ambulances every weekend. It's where they would hold all the events in our tiny little town, and it's also where you voted. And I can remember in early November walking with my dad 200 meters, walking through this little door and standing in line. I didn't know who he was going to vote for. I never even asked. I just was there to observe it. After standing in line, he'd let me walk with him into this little tented off area. I can remember it like yesterday. It was this black felt. I'd be staring up at him being much taller than me at the time as a boy, and I'd watch him cast his ballot. To this day, our dad has never impressed upon who to vote for or how to vote. I'm not going to do that either. But what he did do at the time is remind me that even in our small town, in our tiny community, that we had a voice, that we had a platform, and we had the opportunity to use it. When I was in college, I had the opportunity to intern with a woman named Michele Rosenthal. Michele ended up becoming one of the most impactful people in my life. She worked for a state representative and for the mayor of Pittsburgh. I would intern under her for both. Michele became family. A week and a half ago, I woke up like many of us to an alert on my phone that said shooting in Pittsburgh synagogue. If you don't know it, I'm Jewish. My grandparents are Holocaust survivors. and in Squirrel Hill, Pennsylvania, in a subset of Pittsburgh. It's a highly Jewish populated area. So I texted Michele and another friend who lived in the neighboring community. My other friend said he was okay. He wasn't there. Michele wrote back. She said her 2 brothers were there. Waiting for answers was her quote. As the day went on, we would text, and she would eventually tell me that one of her brothers was shot. They assumed killed, but couldn't find out. Nothing confirmed. Couldn't find out about her other brother. Eventually, I'd wake up Sunday morning to the news that a lot of us read. And it was that Cecil and David Rosenthal, 2 brothers, 2 mentally challenged brothers, had been at this synagogue since they were boys. Probably since I was around that same age when I was walking with my dad. They would greet everybody when they walked into the synagogue. And their lives ended. And it broke my heart. I was finally able to talk to Michele about what she was going through a couple days ago. She didn't have answers. She didn't have words of wisdom. She was just in the middle of it. And it got me thinking. Every weekend I get to go on a college campus. And every day, all of us, in our own right, are around people that have a voice, that have a platform. Some larger, some smaller. But in this country, all of our votes mean something. So here we are, the 4th quarter of the college football season, in the 4th quarter of this calendar year, and at a very critical juncture in our country. I don't know who you're going to vote for. I'm not going to try to sway you one way or the other. But I do know this. I do know that it's important to remember whether or not we have a following, or whether or not we think people listen to us, whether or not we're having a tough day, whether or not we're living a good story, our idealized story, a perfect story, a story that keeps getting better because we're competing our tails off every day to live our best life. No matter what, we've got a voice in that story. So, this podcast, a short and sweet one, much different than the rest. But I think when I look at the tight focus of the season, which is to seek and uncover the humanity in college football, well, this week, however you choose to spend your Tuesday, maybe you've already voted, maybe you're on the fence, maybe you're listening to this after you've cast your ballot. I hope that we remember that when we walk into that quote-unquote tenant off area, we've got a voice. And it might be an 8-year-old listening, looking up at his dad. It might be a 28-year-old listening. It might be someone in their late 50s. Who knows? But we all have a role. And I hope that's how you leave this podcast. I appreciate you listening. Next week we'll get back to making sure that we bring you some more incredible guests who offer you tools around humanity you can add to your life. Much love. Peace.